I am Mr. Prabakar, Assistant Professor of Department of Medical Laboratory Technology. Today, we will be discussing on Introduction to Virology. At the end of this session, learners will be able to define virus and list their structural components, classify viruses based on genome type, capsid symmetry, envelope presence, explain pathogenesis and host response to viral infection, and outline laboratory diagnosis techniques used for the viral infections. Looking into the introduction, what are viruses? Viruses are basically obligate intracellular infective agents which may contain a DNA or RNA as a nucleic acid. These viruses lack enzymes and proteins and their ability to produce them, hence they are considered as an obligate intracellular parasites where they end up taking up the host machinery to use or produce these components. The viruses multiply by a complex process. Let's look into the morphology. If you look at the size of the viruses, the size varies from 200 to 300 nanometer. The largest virus is about 300 nanometer, which is a smallpox virus, and the smallest virus is parvovirus, which is about 20 nanometer. So, viruses are very small organisms, smaller than the bacteria. The structure of the virus, the entire component together is called as a virion, which comprises of the nucleic acid, the capsid, together known as the nucleocapsid. You can see in the picture where there is a presence of the viral genome covered by a component known as the nucleocapsid. Now, if you look at the structure, you can categorize them into three components. You have the nucleic acid, which can be either the DNA or RNA, but never both. They can be either single stranded or double stranded. Both single and double stranded can appear as circular or linear. They may be segmented or unsegmented. The capsid is composed of repeated proteins known as the capsomeres. These are called the subunits of the capsids, and these capsomeres are produced together to form a outer coat which protects the nucleic acid core. The capsids or the capsomeres are antigenic in nature and they are specific for each viruses. Sometimes some viruses have an outermost covering which is called as an envelope. The envelope surrounds the nucleocapsid. The envelope is lipoprotein in nature. The lipid component originates from the host and the protein component is virus coded. Sometimes the protein subunits project out of the envelope as spikes and these are called as peplomers. For example, influenza virus. If you look at the symmetry of the nucleocapsid, the symmetries or the capsomeres are arranged in such a way that they form different symmetries. The first one we talk about is the icosahedral symmetry, which has a 20 triangular facets and 12 corners. Each of these triangular facets will have capsomeres embedded in them. This rigid structure helps in protecting the nucleic acid within them. Example, picornavirus, adenovirus and herpes viruses. The second symmetry that we see is a helical symmetry where the nucleic acid and the capsomeres are bound to form a helical or a spiral tube like you can see in the pictures. You can see that each capsomere is attached to the central nucleic acid which is formed in the form of a helical structure. Together they form the helical symmetry. Now, this symmetry helps the virus to have a very flexible nucleocapsid. Example, rhabdovirus, bunyavirus. Moving on to the symmetry of the virus, third one, we have a complex symmetry. One particular virus, pox viruses, they are neither icosahedral nor helical in nature, but they have a very complex structure, hence the term complex symmetry. The nucleic acid is embedded in such a way that we cannot differentiate the nucleocapsid either into an icosahedral symmetry or as a helical symmetry, hence we term it into a complex symmetry. Example, pox virus. Looking at the shape of the viruses, most viruses are spherical in nature, but we do have rare scenarios or special conditions where there are certain viruses which have a special shape. For example, rabies virus contains or has a bullet shaped structure, whereas the pox virus has a brick shaped structure, adenovirus has a space UFO kind of a structure, rotavirus has wheel shaped structure, tobacco mosaic virus has rod shaped structure and Ebola virus has filamentous structures. These structures vary based on the nucleocapsid that is present within the viruses. Moving on to the classification of viruses, you broadly classify virus based on the genome into DNA virus or RNA virus. The first one we will be looking out into is the DNA virus, where the genome is made up of deoxyribonucleic acid. It can either be in a double stranded form or a single stranded form. Under double stranded DNA, they can either be a non-enveloped viruses which do not have the presence of envelope, or the enveloped viruses. Under non-enveloped virus, we have adenoviridae, papillomaviridae. Under enveloped virus, we have poxviridae, herpes viridae, hepatinoviridae viruses. On the right hand side, if you see the single stranded DNA structure, we are having the non-enveloped virus. One such family of virus is the parvoviridae, which causes human infection. Moving on to the second classification, we have RNA viruses, where the genome is made up of RNAs. It can be either in single stranded form or double strand form. Single strand RNAs can be categorized further into a positive sense RNA and a negative sense RNA. A positive sense RNA indicates that the RNA can directly go into translational mechanism, whereas a negative strand RNA had to be converted into a positive strand RNA. So, under the positive strand RNA, we have the non-enveloped viruses, under which we have picornaviridae, calciviridae. Under the enveloped one, within the positive strand RNA virus, we have the togaviridae, flaviviridae, coronaviridae and retroviridae. If you look at the negative strand, we have enveloped viruses, under which we have filoviridae, bunyaviridae, rhabdoviridae, orthomyxoviridae, paramyxoviridae and arenaviridae. If you look at the right hand side, we have the double stranded RNA, which has a non-enveloped virus, under which we have reoviridae as one of the causative organisms. Now, let us look into the virus-host interaction. How do the viruses interact with the host cells? Interaction of virus can first initiate a cytocidal infections, where the viruses like enterovirus and reovirus kill the host cells by inhibiting either the protein or the RNA synthesis or the DNA synthesis. Secondly, some viruses like hepatitis B virus, hepatitis C virus, Epstein-Barr virus do not result in cell death, but in turn they convert the cell into an immortal cell or a tumor cell. Hence there is cell transformation seen in such kind of infections. The third interaction that a virus can have with the host cell is its ability to cause latency. Viruses like herpes simplex and varicella zoster virus, they remain latent in the root ganglia. They get reactivated periodically and produce recurrent lesions. So, such an infections are called as latent infections. Fourth, some viruses may produce certain intracellular components called as inclusion bodies, which are viral specific in nature, and these globular mass are produced when the virus undergoes replication in the host cycle, and they get concentrated in the cytoplasm or the nucleus or both, and these can be identified. Fifth, we have the damage to chromosomes. Some viruses like the measles, mumps cause damage to the host chromosome in the host cell, which can result into chromatid gaps and breaks in the chromosome that can lead to changes in the cell morphology and functionality. Moving on to the pathogenesis of the viral infections, viruses enter through various regions. We have the respiratory tract, we have the alimentary tract, we have the skin, genital tract. They can enter through the conjunctiva, or they can also be transferred from mother to child, known as the congenital. Now, let us look into each of them. Respiratory tract viruses enter usually through the droplets that are expelled from an infected person through the nose or mouth. They get entered into the newer person and can produce infections. So, certain infections are produced like by certain viruses such as influenza viruses, rhinoviruses, measles viruses, which majorly causes respiratory infections. Certain viruses enter through the oral cavity and remain localized in the gut for certain period of time, and they establish over there, causing the infection in the intestinal region, example poliovirus. They can also be transmitted to certain other regions of the body, where they undergo further multiplication and further spreads and subsequent infections in the target organs. Some enter through the skin, where they produce infections directly at the site of the skin. They enter through the abrasions like papillomavirus, or maybe through an insect bite like arbovirus, or animal bite like rabies virus, or can be through the injections such as hepatitis. All these things can enter through the skin and can cause the infection. Genital infections are usually associated with the sexually transmitted diseases. Such examples are papillomavirus and herpes viruses, which can cause genital infections. Adenovirus can enter through the conjunctival region and can cause conjunctival infections. In rare cases, we also see certain systemic infections which can be transmitted from mother to child that can lead to congenital malformations such as rubella and cytomegalovirus infections. How do we identify these viruses? Now, unlike bacteria, the viruses are very difficult to grow. They are obligate intracellular infective agents. Hence, we try to identify them through the laboratory diagnosis, and we try to identify them through the serological techniques. Now, what is the need to identify them or the causative infections or the causative organisms? One is the lab diagnosis of viral infections is useful for starting antiviral drugs. We can also screen the blood donors to identify if they have any potentially infecting viruses in the blood, or maybe to outbreak investigations. We can also identify viruses to start the post-exposure prophylaxis. Methods of diagnosis. We can go for a direct demonstration of virus. The first and foremost one that is very useful in identifying the virus directly is the electron microscopy. Specimens that are negatively stained using potassium phosphotungstate can be scanned under electron microscopes and will be able to identify the shape of the viruses, such as rabies virus exhibits a bullet shaped structure, and we can identify directly the type of viruses. We can go for a fluorescent microscopy technique as well, where we use direct immunofluorescent technique to identify the viral particles in the clinical samples. Diagnosis of rabies virus using the rabies virus antigens in skin biopsies, corneal smears of the infected patient most widely uses a direct immunofluorescent technique. We can also use light microscopy, but to detect the inclusion bodies and not the actual viruses. We can identify inclusion bodies such as Negri bodies that are detected in the brain biopsies of rabies infected patients. Moving on to the next method, we have the identification of viral antigens. We can use components or tests like ELISA, immunochromatographic tests, flow through assays to identify the presence of viral specific antigens such as HBsAg, HBeAg, which are specific for hepatitis B infection, or NS1 antigen specific for the dengue infection, can all be identified through the serological techniques. We can also identify the presence of antibodies against the virus. Recent infections can be identified by the presence of IgM. Usually a 4-fold rise of IgG also can indicate. Chronic or past infection, we have the presence of IgG predominantly. The normal conventional diagnostic method that we usually use are neutralization tests, complement fixation tests to identify the presence of the viral antigen. Newer diagnostic methods such as ELISA, ICT, flow through assays has helped us vastly to shorten the conventional method timeline. Example, anti-hepatitis C antibodies that are identified in the serum using ELISA. We can also go for molecular methods which are more sensitive, specific, and have a quicker result, such as nucleic acid probe, polymerase chain reactions, or reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction, or real-time PCRs. These are some of the molecular techniques that are widely associated with the diagnostics in the clinical or the hospital side. We can also do a viral isolations, which is growing of the virus in an artificial culture media, usually cultivated by animal inoculations or egg inoculations or tissue culture or cell lines. Now, these components are not widely utilized in the hospital for diagnostic purpose. They are more concentrated in the research field. The use of these techniques are more labor intensive and requires lot of time. Hence, it is not widely used in the diagnostic virology. The specimens that are collected for these techniques should be collected properly and transported to the laboratory as early as possible, so that there is no delay in sample transportation. And refrigeration is essential if the transportation of the viruses is delayed, because most of the viruses are heat labile in nature. They cannot survive in the environment for a longer period of time. To summarize the entire topics, viruses are the smallest obligate intracellular infective agents. They have icosahedral symmetry or helical symmetry, or they may be having a complex symmetry. The virus-host interaction may cause different effects ranging from no apparent cellular damage to rapid cell destruction. The viruses multiply on the living cells. Laboratory diagnosis of viral infection depends on direct demonstration of virus, its components, isolation of virus and detection of specific antibodies. So, with this I conclude the topic. These are my references for the topic. Thank you.